Welcome, children, welcome. Gather around, warm yourselves by the fire. Now, have any of you heard that classic film, A Christmas Story? Fret not if you haven't seen it, for I'll only reference a small part of it. But there's a scene in the movie in which the main character, Ralphie, has a friend named Flick. And Flick is dared to stick his tongue to an icy telephone pole. Now, the problem with icy telephone poles is that tongues tend to stick to them. Nonetheless, Flick was triple dog dare. And so Flick stuck his tongue to that telephone pole, and that telephone pole stuck itself to him. Emergency services was called, and a classic film scene was made. Today, we'll be talking about a similar story in which our main character learns a hard lesson, like Flick, that not all dares are the superb ideas they at first appear to be. Now, our story starts in part one, which is entitled, The Dare That at First Seemed a Superb Idea. Our story takes place in the magical land of Wiley, Texas, in Wiley High School, where our main character, Dylan, was a freshman on the wrestling team. He was sitting at a lunch table with his wrestling friends, and they were up to no good as usual. And his friend Caesar had brought an interesting item to lunch today. It was a sack full of Mio Energy. I don't know who among you knows what Mio is, but it's these little bottles of stuff that you can squirt in your water bottle. Changes flavor, changes the color. You can drink it, pretend it's water, but it's really not. And the Mio Energy is supposed to give you a little kick. I think it has some caffeine or something. I'm not too sure. I'm going to check the ingredients. But Caesar had a sack full of this stuff, and he didn't want to keep it for some reason. So we were all squirting it in our water bottles, drinking it up, and then Anthony gets a bright idea to fill an entire water bottle with nothing but liquid Mio Energy. No. And once he's done this, he turns to Dylan and he says, Dylan, I dare you to drink this entire bottle of Mio Energy. And our young hero, Dylan, he's not one to back down. So, of course, he drinks what he would later find out was in excess of 24 servings of Mio Energy. Which brings us to part two. Why exactly not all dares are the superb ideas they at first appear to be? So Dylan moves on from lunch to sixth period. He starts getting a little queasy in the tummy. But he says to himself, you know, I'm a tough guy. I'll tough it out. It'll be all right. I'll make it home. So he goes on to seventh period. Now in seventh period, Dylan's writing some Spanish. He's getting all up in it. And his hand starts twitching a little bit, which makes his handwriting sloppy. But he says, you know, I'm fine. I'll make it home. So he goes on to eighth period. Now in eighth period, his hand's doing a little more than twitching. It's actually difficult to write, which is a problem in English class. Now, the English teacher notices this and says, Brody, can you take Dylan down to the nurse's office? I don't know what the heck is wrong with him. And so Brody escorts Dylan to the nurse's office. And halfway there, Dylan's legs start twitching. And they're so close to getting to the nurse's office, but Dylan's legs, they just fall out from under him. And Brody half carries, half drags Dylan into the nurse's office. But you know, they made it there. So then Brody leaves, and Dylan proceeds to have a full-on seizure for an hour or two. Now, I have to give a disclaimer. I don't know if it was a seizure or not. Dylan likes to call it that for story purposes, but it was more like full-body muscle spasms. You know, he didn't faint or nothing, and I don't know what the line on a seizure is, so we'll call it a seizure for now. Anyway, so the nurses called his mother, and his mother's like, he drank what? And then they called poison control, and poison control's like, he drank what? And so his mother comes and starts yelling at him, because she's always a supporting woman. And poison control has a bright idea. You should take Dylan to the emergency services room where they hook him up with an IV full of water and flush it out of his system. And his mother says, no, that's much too expensive. She's always concerned for his health and well-being. So instead, they DIY it and they start force-feeding Dylan gallons of water. This is particularly messy because Dylan can't exactly sit or lay still, just flopping all over the place. So eventually he's soaking wet, but about half the water's making it down his system. And you know, eventually he starts flushing himself out and getting rid of it, which wasn't in itself another messy process. And but he makes it through. And so eventually he calms down, and he's very tired and sweaty at this point, because if you didn't know, seizures are a workout. And so his mother embraces him in her loving arms. She says, "It's all right now, son." She takes him home and says, "You can have whatever you like for dinner, so as to better recover." And then hold on. Oh, I'm so sorry. This is the wrong book. So his mother hits him on the back of the head and berates him the whole way home for being such an idiot. But that's okay by Dylan, because from the dare at the lunch table, to the twitches in his classes, to the full-hour seizure, to the 4-hour nap he took when he got home, again, seizures are a workout, he'd learned quite the hard lesson and made it through quite the ordeal. However, you may be happy to know this story has a happy ending, because later on in life, Dylan dared himself to act a fool in front of an audience for a narrative speech assignment. And as it turns out, some dares are superb ideas. Thank you.